The server room is a tomb of humming steel and cold air at 3 a.m. Rows of black cabinets stretch into the shadows, their status lights blinking in a synchronized, rhythmic pulse of green. It is a space designed for absolute order. Then, the rhythm breaks. On a rack near the center, a single light shifts from steady green to a sharp, insistent red. It flashes once, twice, then holds. This is the moment where abstract security theory dies and the reality of digital warfare begins. There is no sound in the room, yet the air feels heavy with the weight of an invisible intrusion. Somewhere, in the vast, interconnected web of data, a perimeter has been breached. The blinking red light is not just a hardware error. It is a signal that an unauthorized presence is now inside the gates. This is the front line. The silence of the room masks the violent, rapid exchange of packets occurring deep within the circuits. Every blink is a heartbeat of a system under siege, a silent alarm calling out to a world that is currently asleep. The game has already moved past the theoretical. The threat is live, and the clock is now running. The breach did not begin with a sledgehammer against a digital wall. It began in a quiet office, miles from the server room, with a single, innocuous email. An employee sat at a desk, the glow of the monitor reflecting in his eyes. He scanned a message that appeared routine, a standard request for document verification. His finger hovered over the mouse. He clicked the link. The screen flickered for a fraction of a second, a momentary stutter in the browser that went unnoticed. In that instant, the connection was made. A silent script, invisible to the user, executed in the background. It did not announce itself. It did not crash the system. Instead, it began to reach out, testing the boundaries of the local machine. It moved with calculated precision, probing the network perimeter for open ports and misconfigured protocols. It was a digital scout, mapping the terrain, searching for the first structural weakness in the defenses. The employee continued his work, oblivious to the fact that his machine had become a bridge. The script gathered data, packet by packet, identifying the pathways that led deeper into the corporate infrastructure. It was the quietest phase of the attack, a subtle infiltration that turned a trusted workstation into an active, hostile probe. The perimeter was no longer a barrier, it was a target. The script did not stop at the perimeter. It began to hammer against the internal gates, a relentless, automated rhythm of failed login attempts. Each rejection left a digital scar in the security logs, a trail of breadcrumbs that went unnoticed in the vast sea of daily traffic. The system stood firm, blocking access, demanding credentials that the script did not possess. Then, the pattern shifted. The brute force noise ceased, replaced by a single, precise entry. The attacker had found a weakness in the authentication chain. A stolen administrative credential, harvested from a dormant account, was injected into the server. The gate did not just open. It welcomed the intruder as a trusted user. The status of the connection changed instantly. The attacker was no longer a guest knocking on the outside of the glass. They were now a ghost in the machine, moving through the system with the authority of an administrator. They could read, modify, and delete files without triggering a single alarm. The environment that was built for security had been subverted from within. The system was no longer protecting itself. It was being directed by an invisible hand. The ghost in the machine needed a tether. It reached out from the compromised workstation, sending a coded pulse toward an external command and control server. It was a silent request for instructions, a digital heartbeat in the dark. But the network was not entirely blind. An intrusion detection system, a silent sentry buried in the architecture, caught the packet. It compared the signature against a database of known threats. The match was instantaneous. A red light blinked on a server rack in the quiet room, a physical manifestation of the breach. The IDS did not hesitate. It flagged the anomaly and signaled the firewall. The connection was severed in milliseconds. The link to the external server snapped, leaving the script isolated. For a moment, the intrusion stalled, but the attacker was not deterred. Instead, they began to shift tactics, abandoning the exposed communication channel. They initiated a secondary process, wrapping their commands in layers of encryption. The firewall scanned the new stream, but the data was opaque. The game of cat and mouse had moved to a deeper level. The red light continued to pulse. The firewall stood as a gatekeeper, but it was now blind. The attacker had wrapped their malicious commands in layers of high-grade encryption, turning the data stream into an opaque tunnel that bypassed standard traffic analysis. The firewall scanned, found nothing suspicious, and let the traffic pass. The first line of defense had been effectively neutralized, but the network was not a single wall. It was a fortress of concentric circles. As the encrypted tunnel bypassed the perimeter, the secondary layer of defense, the endpoint protection system, woke up. It detected an unauthorized process attempting to access the local memory space of the workstation. The system pushed back, flagging the process and attempting to quarantine the infected files. The attacker, sensing the resistance, pivoted again. They attempted to move laterally, reaching out to the central database server. This was the moment the network segmentation protocols triggered. Invisible digital barriers slammed shut between the workstation and the core infrastructure. The attacker was now trapped in a restricted zone, a digital cage designed to limit the damage. Every attempt to probe the database met with a hard block. The system was fighting back on multiple fronts, isolating the threat while the breach widened. It was no longer a simple perimeter defense. It was a desperate, multi-layered struggle to contain a ghost that refused to be caught. The silence of the server room shattered. In the Security Operations Center, a wall of monitors turned a violent, pulsing crimson. The alert was not a suggestion. It was a crisis. Analysts moved in a blur of motion, fingers flying across keyboards as they traced the origin of the encrypted tunnel. The workstation was identified in seconds. One analyst slammed a command to isolate the machine, severing its link to the internal network. The digital cage was locked, but the malware was still active in the local memory. Another analyst initiated a live memory dump, a desperate attempt to capture the signature of the ghost before it could self-destruct or hide. The screen flickered with raw data streams. The malware fought back, flooding the system with junk packets to crash the analysis tools. The analysts held their ground, filtering the noise to isolate the malicious code. They were racing against a clock that ticked in milliseconds. Every command was a calculated risk. They pulled the memory dump, a snapshot of the infection frozen in time. The workstation was now a dead end, a quarantined island in a sea of secure traffic. The immediate threat was contained, but the air in the room remained heavy. The memory dump revealed the blueprint of the intrusion. Analysts traced the malicious script back to a specific, unpatched vulnerability in the server firmware. They did not just delete the files. They dismantled the entire path the attacker had carved through the system. The lead analyst initiated the patch deployment, a series of commands designed to seal the entry point permanently. As the update pushed to the network, a secondary, hidden backdoor triggered a final attempt by the malware to maintain persistence. The team caught the signal instantly. They purged the registry keys and reset the administrative credentials, effectively burning the ground beneath the attacker. The digital debris of the breach was cleared. With the vulnerability closed and the malicious code scrubbed from the drives, the system began its recovery phase. Servers rebooted in sequence, their status indicators shifting from the warning red back to a steady, calm green. The frantic pace of the room slowed. The network breathed again, stable and secure. As the analysts stepped back from their consoles, the silence of the room returning to its baseline hum. The system was secure, but the threat had not vanished. It had merely changed its shape. In the quiet of the help desk, a telephone rang. The caller spoke with the clipped, impatient tone of an executive, demanding an immediate password reset to access a critical file. The operator hesitated, checked the caller ID, and saw the familiar extension. The voice on the other end was persuasive, filled with the manufactured urgency. The operator opened the user management console. They verified the identity through the requested secondary channel, which the caller had already compromised. With a few keystrokes, the operator bypassed the complex encryption that had held the network firm for months. The password was reset. Access was granted. The attacker did not need to break the firewall or exploit a firmware bug. They simply asked for the keys. This was the human element, the silent crack in the armor. Policy and training were the only barriers left. As the operator hung up the phone, the screen displayed a successful login from a remote location. The breach was not a failure of code, but a failure of human judgment. Vigilance was not a software setting. It was a constant, exhausting requirement. The breach was closed, but the lesson remained etched into the logs. Analysts spent the next hour scrubbing the unauthorized session from the directory. They did not just reset the password. They implemented a mandatory multi-factor authentication protocol for every single help desk request, regardless of the caller's authority. The era of trusting a voice on the line was over. Every workstation underwent a deep scan, searching for any remaining scripts or hidden backdoors left behind by the intruder. They found one, a small, dormant file buried in the system temp folder, waiting for a trigger. They deleted it, verified the hash, and locked the directory permissions. The room remained quiet, the air thick with the hum of cooling fans. On the main rack, the red warning light flickered once, twice, and then settled into a steady, rhythmic green. It was a sign of order, but no one in the room walked away from their console. They knew the green light was not a finish line. It was merely a pause in a perpetual cycle. New threats were already forming. New vulnerabilities were being discovered, and new social engineering tactics were being refined by the hour. Security was not a product to be purchased or a wall to be built once. It was a living, breathing process of anticipation. As the shift ended, the analysts remained, eyes fixed on the traffic flow, watching for the next anomaly. They understood that in the digital landscape, the only true defense was the refusal to ever stop watching. The system was stable, but the vigilance continued.